Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, dear viewers to the show. Think about it. Today's topic and what we would like to talk about is education. Specifically, we're looking at schools. Schools, subhanAllah, what do they offer children? What are they for? What's the main idea behind a school? Why do children go to a campus to learn? Theoretically, a dedicated time and place is offered to children to go and gain further skills in various disciplines. And this, in return, makes these individuals, these bright young minds, grow further, enhance their skills, find their calling if they could as well. Practical skills are something that are very important. And in today's school life, when a child, obviously some people are homeschooled as well, and we're sure that parents do their best to make sure that the children receive as much information as possible and are able to groom their skills that they have. But when it comes to schooling, it's not just about gaining skills at the end of the day. You build relationships. You build sometimes everlasting friendships. You get to learn how to deal with people. Schools are the first time in a child's life where they actually face challenges, where they have some innate abilities and capabilities, whether they're good with numbers or whether they're good physically with sports and different things, where they have a knack for science or arts, and they get that acknowledgement that might not have been received elsewhere. And it's also the first time that you face disappointment. It's the first time when you're let down too, where there might be some competition happening, debates, you have sporting events that take place, and so you actually learn what happens in practical life at a very slender level. And this allows you to grow in character. Now, schools are often definitely the initial phases when these children get to find a track for themselves. They're acknowledged for their different skills that they possess, and definitely build character. But it's also a very important time for children to develop opinions. When you're young and you're at home and your parents are teaching you, and obviously children, young boys and girls, their minds are like sponges. So when parents are even talking in the house, or any elder or even their siblings, they learn off of them. They memorize those things, they indoctrinate them, and they use them. But when you come to school, you get to see people from a different mindset. Not every household is the same. Not every teacher is the same. And you get to be accustomed to the way different people react and think. People have different opinions than you. People think differently. You learn to appreciate different perspectives, and you learn to move forward in such a way that you'll be ready for adult life, when you actually have to work and face the world. The impact of this global pandemic, the COVID-19, what has it exactly done? Obviously, I have some numbers here for you that I'd like to share. 1.7 billion students, learners around the globe have been affected by COVID-19. Some schools have moved on to the platform of online learning, whether it be through different applications and mediums that they hold, and some have even closed down. Which means that children, no longer unable to interact with people on a face-to-face level, unable to build those relationships or find out what's happening, but unable to get that kind of education that they thought that they would receive. A famous educationist by the name of David Crystal in the 1980s stated that online education is definitely a new medium of learning and teaching, but it might not be able to equate itself with face-to-face learning. What are those elements? There might be many. Or, the question is, will this alternative mode of education actually be able to equate itself with face-to-face education? Examinations such as the IGCSE, O-levels, A-levels for the British curriculum, SAT exams that people take, end of school exams that children have to take, many of them have either been postponed to a date which is still unknown, and some of them have canceled out. Imagine the type of pressure that parents are facing at this time. for their children. Not every school is free. Many schools around the world, parents have to pay a hefty fee for their children to gain education. And especially fancy big schools around the world definitely do this. What is the impact that they're receiving? Because now if you take a look at a school that is operating because of the fees that they take from the students, they have to move to a new medium, so they have to reallocate budget. The recurring funds are no longer recurring. There are certain aspects that they have to recalculate every step with. Some schools, in fact, 50% of schools around the world have declared that they cannot refund school fees to parents. A difficult time already. Education being handicapped in some way. We'll find out if that is in fact true. But parents, students facing an issue. And if you take a look at the flip side, teachers, the very staff that works within a school. You have teachers, you have counselors, you have the administration department, and you have the leadership of the school. How are they coping with the situation? Recently, research came out, and it's available on Google. You guys can go. I'm not going to mention any names, but you can do the math and you can think about it too. Is that there were some schools in the Middle East, in the subcontinent, in China, and a few other places. Of course, some countries have normalized, but those who haven't been able to, they used to have huge schools. Each grade, for example, grade 5, it will be split into over 8 or 9 sections. So you would require at least 5 or 6 language teachers, 5 or 6 mathematics teachers, science teachers, social science teachers, arts teachers, for the same level. But since this pandemic has come in, and people have moved on to the online platform, what in fact has happened is that the need for 7 or 8 teachers to teach that grade no longer exists. So a lot of the staff and the teaching body has suffered redundancy. They've been told that their services are no longer required. These skilled people who are enriching and molding young minds, who went out, gathered education, sought education out, today are facing a very dire issue. Counselors, people who are required on campus to deal with students who have anxiety, stress, allergies, any kind of medical situation, or just to deal with those students who aren't behaving or following rules. That job description is only required when a school is active and running on campus. Does that mean that these gentlemen are still in for a job? Or have they been redundant? Think about it. Today, I'd like to talk about a very important segment that we're going to be bringing in. We have 3 very wonderful guests with us on our show. We have an educator with us. We have a student who's just graduated from high school and inshallah will be going to university. And we have a student who's in high school and next year is going to be going to grade 11. So I'd like to welcome on the show Mr. Arsalan Arif. How are you today?
I'm good.
You doing all right, brother?
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. Thank you very much. Ali Zarar Atif, how are you today?
I'm doing good. Thank you for asking.
And thank you for being here today as well. And Yusuf, how are you today?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm all right, Yusuf. So, thank you, gentlemen, for being on the show today. Obviously, there are a lot of viewers out here who are parents, businessmen, people in the working force who don't really know what type of impact schooling has been going through because of COVID-19. And some of them are parents as well. They don't know how things are happening. And of course, online alternatives have been created for education to continue. So I guess our questions that we're going to be asking from you today and the answers that our viewers would like to see and hear about would be, are you able to cope with the current time and the way it's happening? And do you feel that justice is taking place? So, Yusuf, what grade are you in now?
I'm in grade 10.
Mm-hmm. And has the school year come to an end?
Yes, it has.
Right, so inshallah next year you'll be going to grade 11.
Grade 11, yes.
All right, and what school do you study in?
I go to Bishop Reading.
All right. So now that the school year has ended, that you've mentioned, how different was your education, whatever you received from your teachers or the school itself, from the beginning of the year when you were going on campus to the end of it when you weren't allowed to go on campus?
So the difference between it was now we're basically all focused on Google Classroom and other types of services, and it's just it's not really face to face. Like if we have questions, it takes more time, for them to get answered, and we can't really, do all the stuff that.
So do you feel that it's not the same as face-to-face learning?
No, it's not at all.
And Ali, what would you say is your perspective on this?
Currently, e-learning, it was the only way to kind of get education across to children in this pandemic. I believe that a lot of aspects of like learning in school is different from e-learning in respect to the amount of labs you can do. E-learning is, right now with the technology that's available to the students in terms of software, a lot of the labs can't be recreated. Another example is like, for example, one of the courses I was in the semester that we were supposed to go was computer engineering. A lot of the labs, a lot of the building devices, learning about physical components we weren't able to do in person, which in my opinion would have been a greater learning experience.
I see. So I guess the next question to both of you would be that obviously you've highlighted that there was still a gap that needs to be covered somehow. But do you feel that the new mode of learning, you mentioned Google Classrooms and you mentioned different online platforms, e-learning itself, do you feel it was still effective in terms of gaining knowledge? Yusuf?
It was effective, but not as effective, as being face-to-face is. Again, like, how I said before, we can't really get answers like right away. You can only ask one question at a time. Suppose I ask a question about, some kind of word problem. I get the answer for it and I come across the next one, and then I have to keep on doing that, and that's like, kind of hard, and yeah.
Ali, what would your take be?
I think it varies from teacher to teacher. One of my teachers, for example, would just give us the lesson. We were supposed to self-learn, which is good because it gives us a little bit of experience for self-learning.
Right.
But one of my other teachers, she would basically film herself going through the entire lesson at home and then share that with us, so we would be able to go through it piece by piece and pretty much simulate as if we were in the classroom.
Right. So you mentioned that one teacher took a certain method to approach the educational platform and another took another method.
Yes.
Do you feel that the second teacher that you mentioned kind of tried to put a classroom tone and kind of environment for you? Do you feel that every teacher can do that?
I feel that every teacher can do that. The second teacher, she did this the whole semester anyway. So she would do the lessons in the classroom, she would film herself doing them and then upload them later in case someone didn't understand a concept or something, and like it was late in the day and they couldn't ask her a question themselves. So I feel like it's something everyone can do, just like to further enhance e-learning.
Right. So you think that this alternative that you received was definitely effective in some way?
It's far superior to the other methods of learning.
Okay, so you found it to be better than face-to-face learning in many aspects?
Oh, not face-to-face, other e-learning.
Other e-learning platforms. I see. Yusuf, you mentioned before, and then we know that you face some allergies and some issues that you have. Previously, when you were going to school, so this is pre-COVID, how was your school able to cater for your needs?
So suppose like obviously all schools are like peanut free, right? So that's one of my allergies. Another thing is they would not allow food to be eaten inside the classrooms, like in the cafeteria. So sometimes students miss lunch. They have like work to do during like break, and they'll go into the class and start eating. So the teacher would say, okay, eat outside of the class and make sure like you wash your hands. In elementary, it was a bit different. So for example, I would, like when I was in younger grades, like, when you're not responsible and you like go around and play with your friends all the time and you don't care about your allergies, I used to eat like in the office with like a buddy. But then after, I would say maybe grade 5 or something, I started, eating back in the classroom. And it was just like the school would say like outside the door, there would be a sign that's like, okay, these allergens are not allowed to be in the class. And yeah, that's just how it went.
So that's a good way to support you, basically.
Another thing is a lot of the times, people would still bring this stuff, and teachers wouldn't find out. So, yeah.
Well, I guess that's something that we have to look into, right? As schools, all you schools out there, you have to look out for this stuff. Look out for it. So, Ali, you mentioned that it's definitely a superior way of e-learning, what one of your teachers was able to accomplish and do with you, which is great to hear. And definitely with a lot of degrees now that have moved online as well, a lot of people can do masters and PhDs online as well. My question to you is that you're going to be going to university next year, inshallah, and you've been accepted into McMaster's, mashallah, which is great. Do you feel that currently in your high school, right before that bridge has to be made to go to university, you've received the necessary skills that you require to face tertiary education?
No, because the only class that I really had e-learning experience in which I would say that I properly learned the skills that I needed was just math, like computer engineering. The other prerequisites I needed, like chemistry, they were more so just they would just give us the lessons. We were just supposed to do them ourselves, and then assessments here and there, right? So all those skills that all that prerequisite knowledge that I need for university, I don't feel like I really got that. I mean, they tried their best with like coping with the COVID, but I feel like they could have done a better job, maybe.
You mentioned that they could have done a better job. How do you think they could have improved? Do you have any suggestions or anything that?
Just the way that they're like relaying information. So like if they all kind of simulated as if they were in a classroom, live lessons instead of just giving us the lessons online to read by ourselves. I feel like that could have been like a big difference. I feel like asking questions in person with a teacher when she's just right there or he's right there is like it's just a way better way of learning than like asking questions later in the day.
And live learning could have actually supported or incorporated that in some extent.
Yes.
Right. Well, thank you. Now, with the next school you're starting, especially with Yusuf, I have this question for you. Have you received any insight on what type of education or what medium, what platform the school will be using to educate you?
So any insight? I mean, so in grade 10 you have like English test that's like at the end that like kind of decides if you graduate or not. You can't retake it. We haven't really got any information on when that's going to happen because we were supposed to have it and then COVID happened, But for like as I know of school starting in September, from what I've heard is it's going to be like online for the most of it. There was like 3 options, I believe. I'm not really sure how that works, but it was like there is an option for it to be online. There's half day with like classrooms of 12 students. So, there's still like social distancing. And yeah, that's pretty much what I...
And Ellie, going into university, I'm sure that your university has corresponded with you in some way or manner. What have they told you about the education that you'll be receiving in September?
They told us pretty early on. So like I think like they told us actually last month that the first year of university is going to be online for all students.
I see.
Just as a way to kind of be ready in case COVID flares up again, or just to negate, just to get rid of the numbers. And just as a safety precaution. So all classes will be online, all lessons are going to be online. And yeah, they're just doing everything online.
Now, looking at the COVID pandemic in general, I mean, subhanAllah, it has taken the world by surprise. It's spread out quite a bit. A lot of people have lost their lives. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Do you feel that not going to school, the steps that your school took, the steps that the government took in order to promote safety, do you actually feel that it was a good step and a step in the right direction? I mean, even though you faced a bit of a setback, let's say, as compared to face-to-face learning. What do you think?
So, like a disease like COVID, you can't really expect it, hit everyone out of nowhere. I remember when March break was starting, and as soon as the Ministry of Education kind of found out that this could affect students as well, they just instantly decided to close the school for 3 weeks just as a precaution. And I feel like that was significant in reducing numbers, because just imagine if we like all went to school in those like 3 weeks that were probably the highest numbers for the country, right? I feel like they did a decent job reacting to it in time. The switch just going straight from learning in person to e-learning for all classes, and all teachers having to teach online when they've been used to teach in person. I think it was like a difficult switch for a lot of teachers, so I don't necessarily blame them for not being able to properly relay information. But I think they did a good job at dealing with the COVID situation.
Well, thank you. And Yusuf, do you have similar opinions towards what Ali said?
Yeah, I think like the action they took, obviously like living is like much more important than going to school. Everything can be extended after. I think it was like a right action for them to take, because people, especially during the March break, people travel, they meet other people, and you never really know who can get the virus. So yeah.
So Yusuf, I'd like to ask you to share any kind of suggestions or advice that you have for those viewers out there, for students who are watching the show as well. Anything concerning COVID and schooling and education in general, if you would like to share.
Any advice? So for school, I would say, keep checking like your Google Classroom or any like online resources every day, because you never really know when a teacher will post an assignment, because, sometimes they could be off schedule and whatnot. So yeah, just stay on top of everything. And if you have any questions, you should always email your teacher and like not hesitate to ask. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Yusuf. I understand, Arsalan, I've had you quiet over here, but we wanted to hear from the young minds before we understand from the administrative and the teaching perspective of things. So we will be coming to you, but after this short break. Please stay tuned. We're talking about COVID-19, the pandemic, and how it has affected schooling. Inshallah khair. Think about it. See you after the break.
4 बजे देखिए आपका किचन विद शहबाज गोरी। सुबह 5 बजे देखिए सितारे और हम। 5:30 बजे देखिए मैसेज ऑफ मर्सी। शाम 6 बजे देखिए दीन और दुनिया। इस्लाम इन मॉडर्न टाइम मजर अयूब के साथ देखिए हर मंगल शाम 6 बजे और हर जुमा शाम 5 बजे। हालात हाजरा सलमान अरशद के साथ देखिए हर पीर को शाम 7 बजे और जुमेरात 8 बजे। थिंक अबाउट इट सलमान कुरैशी के साथ हर मंगल शाम 7 बजे। रियलिटी कॉफी टॉक ताहिर कुरैशी के साथ देखिए हर जुमेरात 7 बजे। टुनाइट टॉक रिजवान असलम के साथ हर जुमे को 7 बजे। कससुल अंबिया सलमान अरशद के साथ हर इतवार 7 बजे। देखिए तकरार कीजिए तकरार समीना जबीन के साथ रोज रात 9 बजे। आप देख रहे हैं आवाज एंटरटेनमेंट, आवाज आपकी, चैनल हमारा, जुड़िए हमसे।
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Welcome back, dear viewers, to the show Think About It. So before we left for the break, we spoke to some young minds who were affected by COVID-19 and how schools have definitely suffered. We're still trying to find out and equate whether or not face-to-face learning and online learning can be equal in some way or form. We have with us a very skilled, highly qualified individual who is in fact a high school teacher. He's an educator. He's also an entrepreneur, mashallah, and we'll be coming towards him. Assalamu alaikum Arsalan Arif. How are you today?
I am Salman. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for the great introduction that you did in the beginning as well.
No problem, sir. No problem. So for those viewers who don't really know, and even I'd like to know a bit more, could you give us a little bit of an introduction on what your position is and what your role is basically in the multiple facets?
So I'm a teacher at a private school in Mississauga. It's called Safa and Marwa Islamic School.
MashaAllah.
I'm a teacher for grade 11 and grade 12 physics.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
So I guess one of my questions is that how have you been able to kind of cope with COVID-19?
Yeah. So I think every single professional or every single business have had to alter the way they live and operate in order to cope with this situation. So for me and for the school I teach at, just before March break, we found out that we're not going to be going back to school for a little while. So we pretty much spent the entire March break trying to figure out what we're going to do. So as a private school, we had students that they pay compared to like public school students. So we can't just tell our students that there's not going to be any classes anymore.
Right.
So we had a couple of different options, and then I think everybody knows what Zoom is now. It's a household name.
That's true.
So we decided to switch over our classes to an online platform utilizing Zoom. So over the March break, we pretty much planned everything out, and the Monday after March break, we commenced our online classes. There were live sessions, and then we followed the same schedule as we would in a regular school day. But obviously not inside a classroom, in front of computers, at home, interacting with students live. So that was a little bit different than public schools, as the students here mentioned. So for us, the transition from classroom to online, for me especially, was pretty smooth, especially because I teach grade 11 and grade 12 students.
Right.
So it's easier for them to understand these things and adapt to this kind of situation as well. Right.
To change.
The change, yeah. And they're good with computers and so on, right? But I know my colleagues that teach younger grades, they had a much more tough time trying to transition from classroom to online learning.
I guess when it comes to younger students, being an educator myself, I've used Zoom teaching people. I'm an IELTS instructor. So for me, usually I've noticed that when it comes to higher level students or people who are regarded as adults, especially in that
they're young
age
adults.
level, that they're a bit more intuitive and
Yeah.
they know how to deal with the system. Whereas when you're a bit younger, a young learner characteristic is that basically you're egocentric, which means that you think about yourself quite a lot and you have short attention spans. And I guess that might have been one of the biggest
Yeah.
reasons. I mean, this is something that research has kind of proven as well.
Yeah, so they had a much more tough time, but with our school, even the younger kids, the teachers it just took them a longer time to transition over.
I see.
But I think they were able to do it quite successfully.
But as a teacher, I guess my next question would be that you were able to transfer yourself onto this online platform, which is great. And you said that you had live lessons happening, and you're teaching grade 11 and 12, which kind of understand and accommodate the situation pretty well.
Yeah.
Did you enjoy teaching online?
I wouldn't say I enjoyed it, to be very honest. There's obviously, there was some positive outcomes that came out of this. For example, I learned a few skills, a few tools that I used while I was teaching online, and I would actually continue to use them. For example, I recorded all my sessions using Zoom. So my students can actually go back and review and see all my lessons that they weren't able to do that before, right? So that's a positive outcome. I also use other means to be able to interact with students through online learning. So that's some of the positive outcomes, but it doesn't mean I enjoyed it. I would rather go back to the normal circumstances that were there before as soon as possible.
Now, as an educator as well, as a fellow educator, the biggest thing that I've noticed is, especially when you're teaching young learners where parents are involved. Now, in schooling, parents are pretty much involved until the students do graduate.
That's right.
Parents, the main concerns that they have is the type of attention, feedback, and individual focus that you could provide students. Were you able to do that with online learning?
Yeah. So the way it worked for me particularly, and it's a lot different than how the public schools coped with this. For my students actually even did tests and quizzes, and these tests and quizzes were actually proctored by their parents. Now the Ministry of Education didn't mandate this. The Ministry of Education for public schools, they could have not done any tests or any quizzes for the students.
I see.
So I actually did carry out those tests and quizzes, and they were proctored. I gave them feedback, but I don't think it's a replacement for in-class learning.
Right.
There's certain types of feedback that you can't give online. For example, if you give certain classwork to students in class,
right,
and you see them doing it, and you see their facial expressions, and you see their body language, you're able to give feedback based on that, right?
Right.
That doesn't translate over in online learning at all.
I see. We have another guest with us who's also a high school student by the name of Samad Khan. Hi Samad, how are you today?
I'm good, how are you?
Thank you for being here. I'm all right, thank you.
Thank you.
I guess one of your classmates that's just sat with us, Yusuf, similar to him, I have a few questions for you. COVID-19, the pandemic itself, as it came in, for you, what was the main difference between pre-COVID learning and post-COVID learning?
When we were in school, I believe that it was much easier to learn, and we understood a lot more when we were learning, and we got more time with the teacher to get help. And if we had troubles with our schoolwork, or if we had troubles not understanding, let's say we had a test and we didn't understand why we got that mark, we would have easy replies and we would understand more why this happened. But now, due to online learning, it's harder to get into contact with your teachers, because they have their busy times and we have our separate times. So it's harder to get into contact with the teachers.
Now, with all three of you, lovely guests that we have today, definitely when a situation such as this, a pandemic arises, it causes us to worry and it causes us to question whatever's to come. But even if, let's go pre-COVID, to the time when school systems were fine, you were going to campus. Now, obviously, a lot of people have positive feedback and areas to improve. So my question is that, inshallah ta'ala, we'll pass this COVID pandemic and things will normalize. We pray that, and we pray that every single child, 1.7 billion students around the world, do get back into education. But if they do, and you have face-to-face learning happening on campus. Are there any discrepancies or any things that you feel that even with normal education can be improved? Some of that I'd like you to tell us if you have any ideas on this.
Most teachers that I've had this semester, even last semester, I believe that they did a wonderful job teaching us and learning while we were at school. It was absolutely amazing, and I believe that being a student, you just have to work hard. You have to try to stay motivated and try to get through the year and try to work your hardest. The most you can work, just try. You just got to keep trying and don't give up. And the teachers really did help with that last semester. Even the beginning of this semester, before this COVID-19 did attack us, before, it was very the teachers, if you ask a teacher for help, they're not going to decline. You just have to talk to the teacher, tell them what you're feeling, tell them why you're having an issue. And they'll
so basically, you should count your blessings while they're still there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Unless you lose them. Ali, what would you say? I mean, even if COVID didn't exist and there was campus learning taking place and you were going on campus to get education, is there anything in your time in school, mashallah, you've graduated, but is there anything that you think could have been better or you've seen an improvement on?
An element that I feel, the only thing I can really think of that schools right now are lacking is the ability for students to self-learn. So I feel like for a lot of classes, maybe this could be because the teacher's lazy or it's just something that they're used to, but they usually just hand everything to you. Like it's just on a plate for you and you just take it. Rather than you having to go on your own time, research it, look up topics. Teacher gives you a topic, tells you to just research the topic. You're just given assignments in which pretty much just fill in the blanks, right?
Right.
Just copy paste the information. And I feel like the ability to self-learn is one of the most important abilities for when you exit high school, because a lot of professions, a lot of skilled jobs, they require you to self-learn. They require you to learn skills, even online.
That's true. That's true. So you think that it should be a bit more dynamic than what it is right now? All right. Well, thank you. And Ursulan, for you as a teacher, pre-COVID, when you were teaching in the class, I'm sure you had a lot of fun and you've compared it to the online learning. And as Samad has mentioned as well, that we should count our blessings. SubhanAllah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed us with a lot. And then when such a situation takes place and a pandemic happens, we're left with a bit of a challenge. So even pre-COVID, when you were inside the classroom, teaching students, learning off of what they were doing, their mannerisms and behaviors in class, where you could give it an innate feedback to them right then and there, because you have that connection and that rapport built with them. Do you feel that there was anything that could have been improved on in terms of the school system, in terms of learning or teaching?
So in terms of for especially for public schools, there's been everybody knows the class size issue that's been there for a very long time, and how in public schools students don't get enough attention. Because the teacher's attention is so diverted. There's 30 students at a time that they have to cater to. So that's something that's been an issue for a very long time. We've all heard it in the news in the past as well. So I think that's something that needs to be addressed very soon. For private schools, for example, where I teach at, the class sizes are small. At max, I have maybe 15 students in a classroom, so I don't have those issues.
I see.
I can attend to each student. I can attend to their difficulty. Every single student have different levels of
varied
understanding.
learning.
That's right. So sometimes you need to spend more time on one kid compared to another, right? So I think that's something that the public schools really need to address. And in the meantime, I think parents, there's a lot of after-school programs that the parents can reach out to that will help students with getting enough attention outside of school as well.
Right. Well, that's good advice. That's good advice. In fact, something to kind of help you build your characteristics and skills further.
That's right.
Now, given that the situation right now is definitely normalizing and becoming better, we're moving into phase 2, inshallah, phase 3 to come, and inshallah, things will be normal. But in the situation that COVID persists, inshallah khair, or in the situation that it comes backlashing. I mean, Ali mentioned that his university has dedicated the first year to more or less online learning, e-learning. What are the plans that your school has for next year, and do you feel that online learning, continuing the way it is, might actually become a standard way of learning?
Well, right now there's still quite a bit of uncertainty in terms of what's going to happen in September. The public school or the Ministry of Education did put out some statements of how they might deal with this in September, but there's still a lot of uncertainty. Nothing is for sure what's actually going to happen. Right now, for schools, they're looking at a mix of online learning and in-class learning, where the students will be divided into different groups, and you might have one group coming in alternate days or even alternate weeks. So you'll have one group coming one week, another group coming next week, and the rest of the class that's not there in class will join online. So that's something that's probably the best solution that they have so far. And then even for the way the Ministry of Education has put it out is that it's not mandatory for students to attend schools if they don't feel safe. If the parents don't feel safe, they don't have to send their kids to school.
So I guess one of my questions would be, sorry to cut you off, what plans exist if online learning has to continue?
So do you mean like no in-class learning continue?
Let's say that is the case.
Well, the alternate that we have with the live sessions on Zoom, it's a pretty good solution the way it is right now. I don't think it's the best solution, but it is what we have. And
I mean, I can level with you on that because I teach on Zoom as well. In fact, I was teaching this morning on Zoom, and sometimes most of my students are international, trying to do IELTS and whatnot. So usually it's internet connectivity issues. Sometimes when you're speaking, your voice is lagging, so it's delaying in reaching the students at times. I think a good component of that very application is that you can mirror your board or your desktop or your screen to it, and you kind of teach them and kind of guide students as well, and they can still hear you while you're explaining things. But yeah, it does have a few discrepancies that I think can.
I don't think it's a replacement for in-class learning, but for the time being, it is the best solution.
For you two dear students that we have, I have a question over here that probably our educator friend won't like, neither will I like. But do you think online or e-learning can replace teachers? Go ahead, Samad, you can go first.
I don't really think so, because online, you already, teachers really do impact how a student learns. When students are not getting teachers, if you're not getting help from somebody, you're not going to end up doing good. Having that person to talk to and ask questions anytime is a very big thing, and it helps students succeed. So having teachers is a very big thing. E-learning, I don't think, would take over teachers, because having that connection with the teacher to get help anytime, that's a very big thing, and hopefully it doesn't get taken away for students, because that's going to impact students a lot.
Ali, what's your take on this?
In the current state of e-learning, for two reasons, I don't think it can replace in-person learning. One is the capabilities of it. A lot of the practical aspects of many classes that you need experiments for, you need in-person activities for, that's not present currently on e-learning. If that's established, then it's a different story, but for now, I don't think it's able to substitute for in-person. Secondly is even the personality of the teacher, the way they teach, I think is significant. Like the amount of information one teacher can teach versus the other, and how much student take in varies on the type of teacher, the way they teach it, right? So I feel like in person, in that aspect, being face-to-face with the teacher, interacting with each other via your facial expressions, body language, I feel like that's important in learning.
I feel like both of you have made us feel very good about ourselves as educators, I'll tell you that. Arsalan, how does it feel to hear an answer like that?
It's good, thank God. That's feel that way. I like to add though, there's a lot of online schools that have popped up though.
Right.
That are that have a self-learning environment for students. I'm actually involved with one of those schools. It's called Canadian National High School.
I see.
It's an online school. Students do complete self-learning. There's no teachers involved. But at the same time, most of the students that are taking courses there, they have tutoring outside.
So they're actually going and getting face-to-face learning
they can't do
some way or the other.
Yeah.
I see. And personally speaking, I mean, we know that, especially being in education now, we've gone through university. In our time, we saw the rise of online learning and online degrees. We saw bachelor's degrees available online, master's available online, PhDs as well, diplomas and certifications as well. Do you feel that someone who has an online qualification, now not high school degrees, I'm talking about a proper degree, for example, engineering, or let's say linguistics, language learning, or let's say mathematics, or within a certain subject. Do you feel that online learning, that gentleman or that lady who has that degree, is still valid? Or do you think that online learning, nope, sorry, I can't let this woman work with me or this man work with me?
Well, I think that's a tough question, and it's quite debatable as well, because I would say, does the degree itself say it is an online degree, or does it say it's the same, or both degrees, like the online degree and the regular degree, does it say that it was online or not?
Well, I guess many of the reputable universities out there, and universities that are definitely accredited by the Ministry of Education in different countries, and universities that have a rank that are on top, like Harvard, Yale, Cambridge, Oxford, UCLan, and all these universities, they're definitely, when you get any which way degree that you get with them, is still valid where it is. But do you feel that a person who wants to become a professional, if they go through the online platform, do you think that it might equate them or can equate them to somebody who actually went on campus?
Like I think it depends, right? Like how the program was created. Like if you're going with a reputable university like Harvard or something like that, I'm sure that they've done their diligence when they created the online program. So I think it's a tough question, and it depends on what kind of university you went to and so on.
I guess a very important aspect to also pay attention to now is that with youth growing up in a very online era, I mean, we all grew up in a social media era. When I was growing up, mobile phones came out. Obviously, there was BlackBerry, there was Nokia before that, and there was a different way of communicating with people. And even when we did gaming, it was quite different. But today, a lot of things relate to online platforms, whether it be gaming, whether it be education, whether it be communication. So basically, my question is that online learning, do you feel, the question that I asked in the beginning, has it done justice and is it equal to face-to-face learning? Samad, what would you say?
I don't think it's equal. I think having the teacher, as I said before, having that teacher, having that figure to help you anytime you need at school, it's a very big thing to students'
So,
success.
Samad, would you like to give some advice to our viewers today?
A positive mindset, try to keep a positive mindset, try to stay strong, try to push yourself, and hopefully you will get good grades. You just gotta try to stay motivated, try to find that one thing that will keep you motivated, and you just gotta keep trying.
Thank you. Ali, would you like to share some wisdom and some advice with our viewers?
I think that currently online isn't equal, but in an ideal world, online would be in a hybrid system with our current education system.
Where you have a blended learning happening.
Yeah, so I feel like there's certain aspects in which online could help, but not overwrite the current learning system, and I feel like that's the best way that online learning could support the students today. In terms of advice for students, just try to adapt. There's tons of resources online, like your parents, your teachers, you can just email anyone you need to online if you ever need help, and just have a positive outlook on everything.
Thank you. Arslan, our educator, would you like to share some advice with those viewers who are definitely parents, teachers, school systems, and students?
For sure. So first of all, for the teachers, I'd like to thank those teachers who really put their heart out in these circumstances and made sure that the students receive the learning that they deserve. So thank you to them. And for advice for teachers, I would say you guys should start planning out how you would create a safe environment for the students and for yourself as well when September comes, and hopefully we go back into the classes. Teachers are quite vulnerable to all these infections and diseases because they interact with the students on a daily basis, right? So they really need to figure out and plan I'm sure the schools and the school boards will have certain guidelines, but make sure you follow them and create some for yourself as well. For the parents, I would like to say, please invest in your children. A lot of times, adults are quick to invest into houses, cars, devices, and so on, furniture, but they forget about their kids. So please invest in your kids. There's a lot of after-school programs that you can reach out to.
Jazakallah khairan. Thank you very much for all of you being on the show. Thank you, Yusuf, for being on the show as well. Ladies and gentlemen, dear viewers, COVID pandemic and the school system today. You be the judge of whatever you saw. We had some bright minds share their opinions as well. Inshallah khair, we pray that things do normalize, and inshallah we pray that those 1.7 billion students around the world, including God knows how many teachers, come back to the forefront and take education forward. Thank you very much for tuning in today. Think about it. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.